if I just say this in a vacuum, it might seem like I am for treating Palestinian people like garbage. Okay, that's why you need to like. But this is a true fact. Okay, and you, Ali, let me know if you think it's true or not. Okay, the average Palestinian, especially is more likely to be okay with committing the worst human rights abuses against Israeli civilians and even children. Okay, then and the average Israeli is very unlikely to be for the same thing against Palestinian civilians and children. Okay, this is true, right? The average Palestinian is way more likely to be for committing such human rights violations. I mean, things that I can't even mention against Israeli children. Okay, this fact might be used for you to get you on the side of you also being on the side of human rights violations against Palestinian, and for you to be on the side of collective punishment. Okay, and in fact, this unfortunate fact has been used to brainwash a lot of Israelis as well to want revenge, not against individuals who have committed a crime, but to be on the side of collective punishment. Collective punishment that Israeli politicians advocate for. I have watched interviews of Israeli politicians who are openly on the side of erasing Palestinian villages, like wiping them out, right? But this, again, saying that that's a fact does not deny the fact that Palestinians are worse, okay? I mean, for example, I can say I know Israeli politicians that have said things that are as bad as being on the side of, well, they did this to us, so it's okay for us to do it to them, right? While knowing that if the people who are for Hamas, for example, the Palestinians in Gaza Strip, they voted for Hamas. So that means that they are okay with act of genocide on all of Israelis, right? That's also true, right? Again, one does not deny the fact you could be better than both of these, okay? Yes, one of them is worse than the other one. One of them is way worse than the other one, right? These horrible views is way more common on the Palestinian side than the Israeli side. That's true, okay? Yeah. That doesn't, but you as an individual could be above all of this, okay? You could be like,
even that though, Armin, there's one thing. It is also not a level playing field. So we can't forget that there's a power differential, right? So there is a, so for instance, and I said, I'm not convinced, this is not an exact analogy to the Israel-Palestine situation, but if you have, women under Taliban rule, okay, well, women under Taliban, you say, well, the women who are under Taliban rule are willing to do much, much worse things to the Taliban and even their kids, right, than the average Taliban guy would do to the women, right? There's obviously, when you say that, it's not a completely fair statement because obviously the Taliban are ruling over the women and they're oppressing them. So in this case, like, the only part of this analogy that applies, and it's not again, not an exact analogy, but this idea that one side is under occupation.
No, okay, Ali, it doesn't really matter. My point is that whether you think that whatever their horrible views are, whatever the percentages are, people's horrible views does not justify you being on the side of human rights violations. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you could be like, well, they were either you could have the argument. I think it's missing the point. Like, for example, if I go and say like, oh, this is a ISIS member, and now you captured them in war, and now they need to be able to hire a lawyer to defend their rights. They need to see their day in court, and you're like, Armin, you're defending a ISIS member. Why are you doing this, right? No, you know what? I don't care. I don't care if you think like somebody would like, well, their horrible views, they were product of the environment, something happened to the parents. Somebody like, no, they should be held responsible. It doesn't really matter if they're product of their environment or not. that's a separate discussion. Whether they deserve to be punished or not, I mean, they deserve, whether you should feel sympathy for their environment while also ask for the punishment, that's a separate discussion for you. That's one debate, and I know what side I am. I'm on the side of feeling sympathy and also want responsibility for them, right? But that's a separate thing from saying, like, whatever their horrible views are, I'm also going to ask for the human rights of even the people with the most vile views. I don't care, right?
Yes.
And I'm going to also talking about a whole group of people as a collective, it's not going to get you anywhere, right? Like, even if 99.9% percentage of Palestinians, which is that's not true, believe that I'm pro genocide against all Israelis, right? For the sake of that last 0.1%, I'm gonna, every single Palestinian should be treated like an individual, what I mean?
I think that they should be treated as individuals anyway, and I'm saying that about both Israelis and Palestinians, because I think a lot of them genuinely are victims of their circumstances. I mean, imagine this. Here's the thing, okay? So supposing you're living in a nice country like Canada, right? And someone you find out that your daughter, your kid, has been assaulted and murdered by a bunch of rich kids, a bunch of rich boys, right? What would you do? Would you go and take a gun and go shoot those boys? No, you wouldn't. You'd be like, okay, the law is going to take care of them. They're going to get arrested. They're going to get tried. We're going to have a defense attorney. We're going to go through due process and everything, and prosecution and everything, and we're going to get them in jail, and they're going to get the punishment they deserve. And you're fairly confident it'll happen, and it most likely will happen. Imagine if it doesn't happen. Imagine if the ruling power says no, okay, the judge says, no, we're not going to do that. These kids are fine, and someone pays money, or there's some sort of corruption, or something happens, and those kids get off scot-free, and your daughter has been assaulted and murdered. Okay, at that point, just basic human nature, and nobody's saying is right. It's not going to be right for the dude to go out, or the father to go out and start going and taking the law in his own hands and start going and gunning these kids down. It's not going to be right at all. All
right, Ali, I really need to read some of because I need to say something.
Yeah, let's say that was the point.
Okay, so Bobo, you want to read Bobo's comment?
Yeah, Bobo's saying, this is what Hindutva does too. If you criticize the BJP government or Modi, you're Hindu-phobic. Yeah, it is a pandemic of victimhood mentality. It's everywhere. Everybody just wants to out-victim each other. Oppression Olympics. Bobo then continues, he says, but because enough Hindus criticize Hindutva and BJP too, I don't expect the Hindu phobia bogey to work in the West like Islamophobia did.
This is something true about Israel as well, because all these people, this whole narrative of you criticizing Israel, you must makes you anti-Semitic, doesn't work inside Israel.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot like, you want criticism of Israel? Look at just listen to Israelis, right? Mm-hmm. The Israelis are very, very critical of their own governments, right? So that's another thing. I mean,
the thing is, right now there's a rift between Jews in the U.S. and Jews in Israel. Like, there's a big, and well, not all Jews in there, it's just half of them, right? There's a big rift. I mean, you saw what happened with Seth Rogen's comments. I mean, there's all of these conflicts that are happening. There's different viewpoints between both of them too. There's just a lot more information. Okay. Oh yeah, Jim King saying Corey Gilk-Schuster, who's our guest. Did we mention? We talked about him. We may not have mentioned his name, but that was him, Corey Gilk. He's got great videos.
Go check out his channel. Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing that I regret is that not meeting him when I was in Israel.
Hey guys, if you want to join these streams live, get your comments and questions read by Ali and Armin and the guests, and most importantly, to get full access to the full video versions of all these episodes, become a patron. Link in the description below.